What if everything you learned about money was wrong? Seriously, think about it. We go through years of schooling, get degrees, land jobs, and yet, for so many people, financial security feels like a distant dream, let alone actual wealth. It's like we're all running on this hamster wheel, working harder and harder, but not really getting anywhere. What if school taught you to work for money, but never how to make money work for you? This isn't just some catchy phrase, it's a fundamental shift in thinking that can change everything. Today, we're diving deep into a book that has, no exaggeration, transformed millions of lives. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, by Robert Kiyosaki. We're going to break down the life-changing lessons from this classic and explore how two very different mindsets, embodied by two very different father figures, shaped two very different futures. This isn't just about getting rich quick, it's about understanding the core principles of wealth creation that, frankly, they just don't teach you in traditional education. Stick around, this could be the shift you've been waiting for, the one that finally clicks. Unlock your financial freedom with just one big idea. Or in this case, several big ideas that all point towards a more prosperous future. We're going to unpack the concepts of assets versus liabilities, the crucial importance of financial education, and why overcoming your fear of failure is non-negotiable if you want to break free from the rat race. This is RicherDigest, where your rich mindset begins. Let's get into it. So, let's set the scene. Robert Kiyosaki, the author of this groundbreaking book, essentially had two dads growing up, and their influence on him couldn't have been more different, especially when it came to money. First, there was his biological father, who he refers to as his poor dad. Now, this guy was no slouch. He was highly educated, had a PhD, held a stable government job, and worked incredibly hard his entire life. You'd think he'd be set, right? But the reality was, despite his intelligence and work ethic, he constantly struggled with financial stress, and never really achieved financial freedom. He believed in the traditional path: school, good grades, secure job. Then, there was the father of his best friend Mike. This was his rich dad. Rich Dad's story was almost the opposite. He didn't even finish the 8th grade, yet he became a self-made millionaire. How? By understanding how money works. He owned multiple businesses, was a savvy investor, and built significant wealth over time. Both of these men offered Robert advice, guidance, and their perspectives on life and money. But the advice they gave was worlds apart, literally polar opposites. And it was this stark contrast in their teachings that ultimately shaped Robert's financial destiny and formed the basis of the book. It really makes you think about whose advice you're listening to. Let's talk about the actual advice these two dads dished out, because this is where things get really interesting. Poor Dad, bless his heart, echoed what most of us hear growing up. Go to school, get good grades, find a safe, secure job with good benefits, and work hard. It's the conventional wisdom, the path that's laid out for us. He valued job security above almost everything else and believed that a high salary was the key to solving money problems. He often said things like, "I'm not interested in money," or "money is the root of all evil," which, as you can imagine, shaped his financial outcomes significantly. Rich Dad, on the other hand, had a completely different mantra. He'd tell young Robert, "The rich don't work for money, they make money work for them." Think about that for a second. It's a total paradigm shift. While Poor Dad focused on climbing the corporate ladder, Rich Dad focused on acquiring assets, things that generate income independently of his direct labor. He taught that most people get caught in the rat race, trading their precious time for a paycheck, always working for someone else, always dependent on that next salary. Rich Dad's philosophy was clear: true wealth isn't built by working hours, but by more income-producing assets. This distinction is absolutely fundamental. This brings us to a massive point that Rich Dad hammered home: the critical importance of financial education. Think about your own schooling. We learn algebra, biology, literature, world history, all valuable subjects, no doubt. But how many of us had a dedicated class on personal finance, investing, understanding debt, or how to read a financial statement? For most people, the answer is probably zero or close to it. Poor Dad, despite his academic achievements, lacked this specific type of financial literacy, and it showed in his struggles. Rich Dad, however, made it his mission to teach Robert and his own son Mike the things they wouldn't learn in school. He emphasized the need to study accounting, the language of business, investing strategies, how markets function, the laws around money, and the intricacies of running a business. He believed that relying on job security was a trap. True security, he argued, comes from financial intelligence, knowing how to make, manage, and multiply your money. It's not just about how much you earn from your job, it's about how smart you are with that money once you have it. This education is what separates those who build wealth from those who simply earn a living. Chapter 4. The Golden Rule: Understanding Assets versus Liabilities. If there's one concept from Rich Dad Poor Dad that you absolutely internalize, it's the difference between an asset and a liability. This is the cornerstone of Rich Dad's entire philosophy, and it's deceptively simple, yet profoundly powerful. Rich Dad defined it like this: an asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability, conversely, is something that takes money of your pocket. That's it. It sounds easy, but so many people get this wrong, especially with their biggest purchases. For example, most people consider their primary residence, their home, to be their biggest asset. But Rich Dad would challenge this. If your house is costing you money every month in mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, and upkeep, without generating any income, then from a cash flow perspective, it's actually a liability. Now, this isn't to say owning a home is bad, but its classification matters. Rich people, according to Rich Dad, focus their efforts on acquiring true income-producing assets. Things like rental properties that generate positive cash flow, stocks that pay dividends, bonds, intellectual property, or businesses that operate without their constant presence. The formula is straightforward: acquire more assets and minimize unnecessary liabilities. This is the fundamental path to building wealth. Chapter 5. Building Your Wealth Engine: The Power of Assets. So how did Rich Dad and Poor Dad approach this idea of building wealth in their own lives? Well, Poor Dad, as we've established, focused almost exclusively on his job. His income came from his salary, and his financial strategy revolved around getting promotions and pay raises. He was an employee through and through, and his financial well-being was tied directly to his employer. If he lost his job, his income stream would dry up. This is the reality for a vast majority of people, and it's a precarious position to be in, no matter how high your salary. Rich Dad, conversely, dedicated his energy to building and acquiring assets. He understood that his businesses were assets. His real estate investments were assets. Even while Robert was young and eventually working a job himself, Rich Dad continually advised him to use his income to build his asset column. This meant starting small businesses on the side, investing in rental properties, buying stocks and bonds. The key takeaway here isn't necessarily to quit your job tomorrow and go all in on some risky venture. It's about starting to build your own financial pipeline, your own wealth-generating engine, even while you're still employed. Your career can pay the bills and fund your lifestyle, but it's your that will ultimately build lasting wealth and financial freedom. Chapter 6. The Corporate Advantage: Playing the Game Smart. Another fascinating lesson Rich Dad imparted to Robert was about how the wealthy strategically use corporations to protect and grow their wealth. Now, when some people hear corporations, they might think of giant faceless entities or complex legal structures only for the super rich. But Rich Dad explained that understanding the basics of corporate structures can offer significant advantages, even for smaller investors and business owners. It's not about tax evasion or doing anything shady, it's about understanding the rules of the game and playing it intelligently. One of the key distinctions he highlighted is how corporations handle expenses and taxes compared to individuals. Typically, individuals earn income, pay taxes on that income first, and then try to live and invest with what's left over. A corporation, however, can often earn income, pay its legitimate business expenses, and then pay taxes on the remaining profit. This seemingly small difference in the order of operations can have a massive impact on how much wealth you can accumulate over time. It's a powerful example of how financial literacy extends beyond just earning and saving. It includes understanding legal and tax strategies to keep more of what you earn and protect your assets. Chapter 7. Conquering the Biggest Obstacle: Overcoming Fear. One of the most significant barriers that prevents people from achieving financial success, according to Rich Dad, isn't a lack of opportunity or even a lack of knowledge, it's fear. Specifically, the fear of losing money. This fear is incredibly powerful and can paralyze people, keeping them stuck in jobs they dislike, preventing them from making investments, and generally controlling their financial decisions. Poor Dad, for instance, was very risk-averse, which contributed to him playing it safe and never really breaking out of his financial struggles. He was afraid of making mistakes. Rich Dad, however, had a completely different perspective on fear and failure. He taught Robert that failure is not something to be avoided at all costs. Instead, it's an integral part of the learning process. He believed that the most successful people are often those who have failed the most, because each failure provides a valuable lesson. Taking calculated risks, experiencing setbacks, learning from those experiences, and then trying again with newfound knowledge is precisely how the rich often grow their wealth and their wisdom. Fear keeps people trapped in the rat race, too afraid to step out and try something different. Courage, and the willingness to learn from mistakes, is what ultimately frees them to pursue financial independence. Chapter 8. The Ultimate Investment: Learning Valuable Skills. When it came to careers and jobs, Poor Dad and Rich Dad also had fundamentally different advice. Poor Dad, with his emphasis on security, would typically advise finding a job that pays well, has good benefits, and offers a clear path for advancement. The primary focus was on the paycheck and the stability that came with it. This is the advice many of us receive: chase the highest salary, get the prestigious title. And there's nothing inherently wrong with wanting a good income, of course. But Rich Dad's advice took a longer-term, more strategic view. He'd say, don't just look for a job that pays well, find a job that teaches well. He encouraged Robert to take jobs not necessarily for the immediate salary, but for the skills he could acquire. For example, Robert deliberately worked in sales for Xerox, not because he loved selling copiers, but to overcome his shyness and learn the crucial skill of selling. He understood that skills like communication, leadership, marketing, negotiation, and understanding financial statements are transferable and incredibly valuable, regardless of the industry. The more skills you accumulate, the more opportunities you create for yourself, and the more valuable you become. Never stop learning, never stop acquiring new skills. That was Rich Dad's powerful message. So, there you have it. A whirlwind tour of some of the most powerful lessons from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's clear that the difference between Rich Dad's and Poor Dad's financial outcomes wasn't just about luck or opportunity. It was fundamentally about their mindset, their financial education, and the actions they took based on that knowledge. From understanding assets versus liabilities to conquering fear and prioritizing skill acquisition, these principles are timeless and just as relevant today as they were when the book was first written. What if everything you learned about money really was holding you back? This book challenges you to question those traditional beliefs and to start thinking like the rich do, focusing on building assets, investing in your financial education, and making your money work for you. It's not an overnight fix, but a journey of continuous learning and application. If this video sparked something in you, hit like and subscribe. We're going to be diving into more concepts like these to help you build that wealth-generating mindset. Which lesson from Rich Dad, Poor Dad hit you the hardest? Or which one are you already applying in your own life? Let me know in the comments below. I genuinely love hearing your perspectives and experiences. And don't forget, the journey to wealth starts with a mindset shift. This is RicherDigest, where your rich mindset begins. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.